Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Man Amongst Men podcast.
Would you say that you are mentally strong? In my experience, a lot of guys overestimate their ability to endure discomfort, stress, and pain with power and resourcefulness. Now, I see a lot of guys grit their teeth and white knuckle through pain and stress, but hardly operating from a place of power. This is why too many men end up drinking too much, eating too much, watching too much porn, running away from conflict, especially from their significant others, and then become workaholics to distract themselves from the things that are stressing them out and providing discomfort and pain. So Brian and I decided to do an entire podcast on this called 5 Practices to Make You a Mentally Tougher Man. And we created a 1-page PDF with those 5 challenging practices that you can implement in your daily life to build your capacity for mental and emotional toughness, to help deal with adversity, and to make you a much stronger, more trustworthy man. Go to doinnerwork.com/5 practices. That's the number 5 and practices, all one word, doinnerwork.com/5 practices to download the PDF and to start training better today. So you want to be a biohacker and optimize your health, energy, and longevity? Well, now for $500, you can do exactly that. You can get your personalized DNA report for as little as $100, and then you can get that DNA report results test read by a doctor who can give you personalized, not generalized, but personalized nutrition, sleep, and workout advice for $400. I recently had my DNA tested using an at-home spit sample kit provided by 23andMe. And once that report was ready, I sent the raw data to Dr. Anthony J., who you may remember from episode number 38, How to Keep Your Dick Healthy Part 2, to read the report and give me personalized advice. And in today's episode, I share the results of that reading and the benefits I've already experienced from my personalized sleep supplement and diet protocol. Now, there are 5 practical things a DNA test can tell you as long as you have someone who's in the know, like a Dr. Anthony J., who can read this to you. Dr. J sent me a 14-page report that broke down my genetic coding into 5 practical categories. Number 1, brain health. Number 2, diet. Number 3, the vitamin, hormones, and toxins report. Number 4, workouts. And number 5, sleep. Inside each of these categories, Dr. J highlighted the gene mutations that could indicate for me an increased risk of certain diseases like colon cancer and Alzheimer's, increased risk of certain ailments like getting arthritis or having a higher propensity for anxiety, sensitivity to certain foods, and then trouble with my body repairing itself during sleep based on my genetic coding, and then what to do about that. So instead of following generalized advice that you may read in Men's Health magazine or some random article on the internet, Dr. J gave me a personalized protocol based on my genetic makeup. And within the first 14 days of implementing my personalized protocol, I've already seen my deep sleep spike by over 33% from its average over the past year. And I've been tracking my sleep using the Oura Ring, which Dr. J tells me is considered by the US military to be the world's most accurate sleep wearable. So in this episode, here's what you can expect. I will go over the 3 major DNA testing companies where you can get your DNA run for $100. I'll tell you about some of the DNA tests and how they may affect your ability to get life insurance or long-term care. The 5 practical categories where you can upgrade your health, like the ones I just mentioned. The most trusted device you can buy to track your health progress along your journey. Why intermittent fasting for some people actually helps optimize brain functionality. Why the sauna 3 days a week at 100 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit can help rebalance your hormone system. And like I mentioned, I share the results of my consultation, my personal information, and the new protocol that I'm on. And Brian does an exceptional job of asking the questions along the way so that you can get this personal to you as you're considering doing the same for yourself. Enjoy today's episode. For the last 5 years, guys, I have been on a mission to optimize my energy. And I've got to tell you, it has been a fucking frustrating journey at some points. I've hit dead ends. I've had can't miss advice miss wildly for me. I've had some real head scratchers. I felt like I was doing all the right things, and yet I would still wake up in the morning after 7 or 8 hours of sleep and not feel well rested. I would have brain fog and really start slow in the morning, even when I had coffee. I would have energy fluctuations throughout the day. I would fatigue later on in the day, wouldn't know what caused it. Sometimes it would take me days to recover from certain workouts, even when I trained regularly. And I could never quite figure out my digestion. My gut just always seemed to have some sort of objection to whatever I was eating or not eating. I couldn't figure that out. No matter how many naturopathic doctors and supplements that they threw at me, I started to get really frustrated as I continued to do more research and read generalized nutrition and sleep and diet advice because all of the studies seemed to be conflicting. I would read one study that said, kale is the panacea leafy green. It will solve all your problems, got every nutrient you need in it. And the next day I would read a similarly reputable article and study that says kale is tough to digest and is probably causing you a lot of digestional issues. I would read a study that caffeine is no good for your nervous system. Get rid of it. And then the next day from a reputable source, people who drink coffee 4 cups a day live longer than people who don't. I just got tired of all this trial and error, of all these conflicting reports. What I've been waiting for the past 6 years is personalized guidance around nutrition and working out and sleep hygiene. And that day is here. So why it's 6 years? 2013, I went to something called the Aspen Ideas Festival in Colorado. It's a multiple day summit of the world's best leaders, experts in healthcare, in science, in business, in nutrition, in education, in transportation, you name it. Basically, everyone comes together and envisions what the next 10, 50, 150 years of humanity will look like. Back then was the first time that I ever had a chance to learn about DNA sequencing, the Human Genome Project, which basically, through just a simple spit sample, you can get a human being's entire DNA code, what makes us unique as individuals. And inside of that DNA code lies some very specific things that we may want to know about. Like our genetic coding can indicate whether or not we are more likely to get cancer than someone else, or Alzheimer's, or certain foods that you may have allergies or resistance towards, supplements that you need to take maybe because you'd be deficient in other places. You may be predisposed to anxiety or depression based on your genetic sequencing. In 2013, I'm like, I want that shit now. But back then, it was really only available to people who had lots and lots of money. But here we are 6 years later, the technology has advanced, and now you can get your entire genome sequenced for under $100. And I'll tell you what companies you can get those from shortly. And through a $300 consultation that I did with Dr. J. Anthony, our guest from How to Keep Your Dick Healthy Part 2 and the author of Estrogeneration, I have hired him for a $300 1-hour consultation to read my raw data report that I got from 23andMe with my genetic test. And he was able to give me some very specific guidance that's been useful for me in some of the most important areas of my life regarding my energy. Where I'm going to take you in this shorter conversation today is who some of the DNA players are out there, like who you can get your test kit done by, considerations you'll want to make before handing over your spit sample and giving a company, a private company, access to your personal genetic information, what the personal consultation looked like with Dr. J and the 5 categories that we went through, which were brain health, diet, vitamin, hormone, toxins. That's one category, vitamin, hormone, and toxins, workouts, and sleep. And then I'll go through kind of the specific rundown of some of the areas that he called out for me, which may or may not be interesting to you, but you can start to see how granular this can get. And I'm going to give you some results that I've already been experiencing in the very short week that I've put into practice some of his counsel. The DNA testers, the big three are Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage. Ancestry has over 10 million registrants in their database. 23andMe has about half of those, 5 million people, and then MyHeritage has 2.4 million. If you wanted to get your DNA test run, it costs about $99 for the cheapest version. You'll get all your raw data from Ancestry and 23andMe, and then you could send that over to Dr. J. Anthony, and he would read it for $300. So you can get this whole thing done for under $500. And then you have to buy the supplements. That's a whole other different ballgame. He does not read MyHeritage. So if you wanted to do this, it would be Ancestry or 23andMe. Some of the considerations before handing over your DNA to any of these companies are privacy and the impact on your potential to get life insurance. So privacy. I did not do a deep amount of research on the implications around who owns my DNA. I know there are some people who are worried about handing over a spit sample and then someone down the road making a copy of you and then becoming a Terminator and destroying the planet. If someone chose to make a copy of me and turn me into a Terminator, I'd be flattered. But I'm sure there are some things out there that I haven't thought deeply enough about before I hand it over. I'm an eternal optimist. So what I'm doing for you is I'm actually including 3 links to articles in the show notes from Consumer Reports, from NPR, and from The Guardian that list out some of the considerations that you may want to make before handing over your spit sample, and then also what you can do after you hand over your spit sample to get some of your DNA information removed from those companies. So I will link those in the show notes. I'm not going to go any further about privacy considerations there. One thing I did find interesting is the impact a genetic test could have on your ability to get life insurance. This is in the NPR article that I'm going to be hyperlinking. In the United States, it's illegal for you to be discriminated against on your health insurance, getting health insurance based on your genetic coding. But life insurance is different. For example, if you took a 23andMe test and found out that you had one of the genes that's responsible for Alzheimer's, the APOE4 gene, if you have 1 or 2 of those markers, then a life insurance company, as they're doing their due diligence on you, can ask if you've taken a genetic test. It is your duty, what it says in the NPR article here, it is your duty to disclose that you have taken that test, that you do know that you have a marker, in which case they may actually jack up your rate as a result of that because you're at a higher likelihood for getting Alzheimer's, which is a very expensive disease to care for. You may even be denied long-term care insurance. I took 23andMe a year ago, fortunately found out that I have no genetic markers there. And I want to give you some broad statistics that I took from The End of Alzheimer's, which is a book written by Dr. Dale Bredesen. I have to fact check these because I've read these a little while ago, so you may need to go to the book and get more specific examples. If you have no genetic markers, you can either have 0, 1, or 2. If you have no genetic markers, then eating the average American diet, living the average American lifestyle, then you are at a 10% risk, 10%-ish risk of getting Alzheimer's over the course of your life. If you have just 1 of those 2 genetic markers, it automatically increases to 40 to 45%. Eating the traditional American diet and living the traditional American lifestyle. And if you have 2 of those markers, it goes up somewhere between, I believe, 70 and 90%. Eating and living the traditional American lifestyle. The good news is Dr. Dale Bredesen, who's probably the foremost expert on Alzheimer's research, says Alzheimer's should be an incredibly rare disease. We just got to stop sucking at living our lives. If we can do tests like these and understand how our bodies react very specifically to certain styles of eating and working out and supplementation, then we can avoid this stuff altogether. And that's what some of these experts are saying is we can actually avoid these problems, these diseases and ailments that are killing so many of us or encroaching upon the quality of our lives much earlier than they need to be. We can actually eliminate that shit by making more specific, intelligent, and precise decisions around this. So I got my 23andMe test results. I sent them over to Dr. J. It was a simple download, Dr. J. Anthony. And I'm just going to call him Dr. J to keep it simple from now on. Within a few weeks, I had a call scheduled with him. He sent me a report. I have a 13-page report that breaks out these 5 categories: brain health, diet, vitamin, hormone, and toxins is one category, workouts, and sleep. What he basically said was that like your genes have 2 markers, a plus or a minus. And if you have a plus, that means you have the bad copy of the gene. You'll get 1 copy of the gene from mom, 1 copy of the gene from dad. And if you have a minus, those are 2 good copies. And those don't even show up on the report. The only stuff that shows up on the report are copies of genes where I have either a plus minus or a plus plus. So plus plus basically means I have 2 bad copies of a gene and that I'm at much more of a risk of getting something or have a problem with something. For example, if you were to have a plus plus copy of the APOE4 gene, that's the Alzheimer's gene, then you would have a 70 to 90% chance of getting Alzheimer's over the course of your life. It's helpful to know something like that so that you can start to take precaution now, especially for something like Alzheimer's, because they say that starts to form 30 or 40 years in advance. It is a long process, and only the symptoms show up in the last after 20 or 30 years of laying down a really bad foundation internally. So if you know about it in your 20s or 30s, you can start to make dietary changes right now, supplement changes right now that can avoid that nasty ending to the story. So let's dive into the first category, which is on brain health. One of the things that Dr. J pointed out to me is that my brain does not perform autophagy very well. Autophagy is the process that happens when you are sleeping, where your brain clears out all the toxins, all the gunk of the day. And it's an essential part of keeping your brain healthy so that when you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go. But for long-term effects of memory and recall and learning, if your brain doesn't perform autophagy very well, then that's problematic over the course of your life. Again, it's a way of cleaning out damaged cells, regenerate newer, healthier cells. So one of the solutions that he recommended to me, which is something I actually put into practice about a year ago, is called intermittent fasting. And if you're not familiar with intermittent fasting, it's basically having longer extended periods of time where you don't eat anything at all. One of the forms of intermittent fasting that I use and my mother uses is called the 12-3. 12 means 12 hours I don't eat, and I don't eat 3 hours before I go to sleep. So it would look something like this. I eat my last bite of food at 7 p.m. and I go to bed somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock, right? So at least 3 hours last meal. So my body's digested that food. It's not digesting that food when I sleep. I don't eat again until 7 a.m. the next morning or later, at least 12 hours. So what happens is like when your body no longer is digesting food, it starts to burn some fat. It starts to clean out the cells, the damaged cells in your brain. It's basically like a scrub down of your brain. If I don't intermittent fast, I will have long-term brain effects. In brain health also, one of the things I found is that across 4 categories of anxiety, I am a plus plus, 2 bad copies of the gene, which means I am highly disposed to being more anxious in nature. And from my lived existence, I can tell you that for sure this is true. And so he tells me to moderate some of my caffeine intake, to finish my caffeine before 10 a.m. The general principle, if you were to read generalized nutritional guidance, don't have caffeine after 2 p.m. For me, caffeine stays in my system for much longer, increase in anxiety, would have a hard time sleeping or staying asleep or getting deep sleep. I need to stop drinking caffeine by 10 a.m. in the morning. Some other solutions that he gave to me were supplements that I can use, like 5-HTP and L-tryptophan, St. John's wort, and GABA. I can link those in the show notes. These are not recommendations at all for you, but these are supplements that he's encouraging me to take before I go to sleep, which help produce serotonin. Serotonin can help to knock off the effects of anxiety. And in the past week since I've been using that, I've actually noticed an uptick in my quality of deep sleep and my recovery during my sleep. And I'll tell you how I did that in a minute. When it comes to diet, the second category, 2 major things that came out here is that I have a lack of nitric oxide production based on my genetic coding. And if you remember our first How to Keep Your Dick Healthy podcast with Dr. Amy, She talked about nitric oxide as being the panacea molecule. In 1999, 3 American scientists won a Nobel Prize for Science by discovering the benefits of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide widens your blood vessels, helps to regulate blood pressure, initiates erections, fellas, battles infections, prevents formation of blood clots, it acting as a signal molecule in the nervous system. Nitric oxide production is essential for keeping your blood flow going, keeping your erections strong over the course of time. And my body naturally does not produce as much nitric oxide. So I need to actually supplement with that. A couple of suggestions were to supplement with L-citrulline, which is found in beet juice powder. So I bought beet juice powder. And the other thing I found is that when I was sleeping, I was a mouth breather. And nitric oxide is produced when you breathe through your nose. So I ended up buying Somnifix mouth strips. These are mouth tape that I put over my mouth so that I can breathe through my nose at night, which increases the nitric oxide production. Yes, this is the lengths that I'm going to. So those are big there. And I found out also in my diet that I have tons of leaky gut genes compared to most people. What that means is I'm more predisposed to having gut problems. One of the key solutions for that is intermittent fasting. Again, since I've been putting that into practice over the last year, I've noticed that my gut health has been stronger. My brain functioning has been faster. My cognition is better. And I don't find the gassiness or the bloating that I used to most days. The third category, vitamins, hormones, and toxins. One of the things that he found is that I'm genetically predisposed to having a difficult time removing estrogen sources from my body. This is problematic because if estrogen is staying stuck in my body, it's potentially blocking the ability to put testosterone to use. It can be causing emotional swings. It could be causing my hormone system to be way out of whack. And he wrote his entire book, Estrogeneration, how estrogens are keeping you fat, sick, and infertile based on how we're swimming in a sea of estrogen sources. So go back and listen to that podcast on how to keep your dick healthy with Dr. Anthony J. A lot of deep dive info on that. But what he said for me for solutions were the sauna 3 times a week at 180 degrees for 11 minutes. 3 times a week, 11 minutes. Don't need to go any more than that. And that would burn off a lot of the external estrogen that's in my system. So I have a sauna at my gym. It's not quite at 180 degrees, so I have to stay in a little bit longer, but 3 times a week after my workouts, done deal. And also eating some vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and kale helps in that regard also. He also found that the adrenaline hormone stays in my system much longer than most other people, which means workouts after noon are problematic for me because it could still affect my sleep at night. If I were to watch a TV show that could jack me up, I used to watch 24 right before I would go to sleep as a way of winding down. And in one respect, I would get tired, but in another respect, my heart would be palpitating and it would fuck up my sleep at the end of the night. So he's telling me, keep your workouts in the morning and also find a way to wind down at night because adrenaline really will mess me up. Workouts. He said that I am at a 4 to 5-fold increase for arthritis. Once again, intermittent fasting is a solution for that. And he said that joints and blood flow, for me in particular, that I may have a problem with achy joints over the course of time. Our joints don't have blood vessels going into them. Our joints rely on us to have movements for the synovial fluid to keep us lubricated. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, I would do leg workouts and I would be sore for 4 days. If I were to do squats on Monday, I could barely walk on Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe feel better on Thursday, but I couldn't get back to squats until probably Saturday or Sunday of that following week. And that was my pattern for a year. But when I started to get fascial stretch therapy, this is basically fascia is the stuff that surrounds your skin that can harden like cellophane. You need it broken up. And fascial stretch therapy, which I go to Premier Sports Recovery in New York City, I can link that as well. It's basically getting my legs bent, flexed, rotated, turned into a pretzel. Ever since I did that, I've been doing that regularly for the past few months now. my recovery time is 24 hours. I barely feel sore the next day. I could go back after having done squats on Monday and get back right on the squat rack on a Wednesday if I wanted to. I don't do that. But this is showing me why fascial stretch therapy works so well for me. And then finally, the last category is sleep. He said that I have 2 genes that are positive for general sleep difficulties, which would mean my sleep quality wouldn't be as good. That's why the autophagy, cleaning out while I'm sleeping, is a problem. So he said that the solutions are to use the supplement glycine before I go to bed. So I bought a glycine from Amazon. I take 3 pills of that before I go to bed. And also, I'm more sensitive to blue light. If I'm looking at a screen, my cell phone or my laptop, then I could have problems staying in restful sleep. I need to buy blue blocking glasses, which I've been using for a year. The Swanee glasses, also in the show notes. So he said to use those for at least an hour before I go to bed. So over this last week, just 1 week of implementing some of these supplements for anti-anxiety and supplements like glycine before going to bed, I've been tracking my deep sleep and my recovery on my Oura ring. And my Oura ring is a ring that I wear on my finger. It's widely considered to be the world's most accurate, trackable, and wearable device. So it's like a Fitbit, except it actually is accurate. And that's based on studies from the US military, the Special Forces, that apparently, Dr. J told me, the Special Forces tried every wearable, trackable device that's out there. And by far and away, the number one most effective and accurate is the Oura ring. And what the Oura ring tells me is not only how much time I've slept, but the quality of deep sleep and the REM sleep, and this other characteristic called heart rate variability, which basically tells you like how well your body is recovering, how well your nervous system is repairing itself over the course of the night. And in just the last week, that heart rate variability number has gone up by 50% just by making some of these changes. And my heart rate variability numbers for the past year have been pretty static. I haven't been able to figure out how to move those. Just with some of these extra tips that Dr. J has given me for the past week, and that is not a conclusive or comprehensive sample size, but for the past week, my numbers have spiked so that my recovery is now showing at a much higher level, which over the course of time will slow down the aging process, will speed up my ability to wake up in the morning, feel better, have energy throughout the day. As I learned about all this stuff, guys, I had to share it with you. I don't know if this was too geeky or too pedantic for you or too detailed. So if you loved it, come on Instagram at Dominic Q and let me know that you really liked this. Hit me up on DMs. If it was too pedantic and Dom, you want to just go back to the simpler stuff, then please let me know as well. I think that's a wrap. In the next few weeks, maybe in the next few months, I'll do an update on how an extended version of this protocol is affecting me, and we'll take it from there. Enjoy. Hey, thanks for listening to the Man Amongst Men podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you want more access to tools and resources, and you want information on our upcoming live events and retreats, head on over to www.doinnerwork.com.